Our final presenter today, I have the privilege of knowing outside in the real world and owning some of his artwork. So Christian Reichle, class of 2014, BSDE. Christian Reichle is a multidisciplinary designer with a background in signage, wayfinding, and branded experiences. This has driven his interest in public art and installation. He is interested in the ways that design can help people better navigate, experience, and understand spaces, and the ways in which art can bring us together through collective experiences. Christian, the stage is yours.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Brian. Okay, so I'm going to start mine with a bit of a show of hands. So how many of you have experienced the death of a loved one or someone close to you? Should be everybody. Next question. When you look back on that person, are there things that you wish you could have asked or in retrospect would have liked to ask? Probably everybody raise your hand again, yes. So put simply, this is what my project Before You Go was all about. To encourage us to have those conversations we will wish we had had before you go. So much of what we've heard today is all about projects and campaigns and things that use experiential design to create conversations that go well beyond the project or that experience. And the same is true for what we had here. Oops, gain control here. Like all of us, I've lost quite a few people in my life, but last summer we were losing my grandma, Pater. In her prime, my grandma she immigrated into the States when she was 21. She got a PhD from Brown in organic chemistry and worked over 30 years as a NASA scientist. She was an avid traveler, and while I like to think that I asked her a lot of things that I would have liked to ask her, what I've realized in the last year or so since she's passed is that we never really get to all of those things. So last summer, my lease here in Cincinnati was coming to an end, and COVID was sort of wrapping up, more or less, and my partner and I were looking for a bit of change, so we loaded up our dog in our camper van, and we headed up to Grand Rapids so I could spend some time with my mom while my grandma was passing. As if that wasn't reason enough, I was, being a 30-year-old returning home, looking for a little more of a reason to return. My mom and I had talked about doing an art project together for a competition in Grand Rapids. Ever since my family moved to Grand Rapids, it's been about a decade now. Well, it's very pixelated. I had been intrigued by this event that goes on in Grand Rapids called Artprize. It's a citywide public art competition that brings thousands of people downtown over a 3-week event to experience art all over downtown. So it's both in traditional art spaces, museums, and that sort of thing, but also cafe walls, restaurant walls, street corners, and even in the river itself that runs through downtown, the Grand River. I was drawn to the experiential nature of the event. There's certainly lots of art competitions around the world, but not often do they fall within a citywide, very public-facing experience. So my mom and I had often considered entering. I had talked to her about a lot of ideas, and she will be the first to admit that she is not an artist, but her work had recently put her in contact with a lot of older folks with whom she had become good friends. And as she started to know these people, she had started to hear their stories, and she started to want to figure out a way that we could tell those stories. I was very familiar with projects such as StoryCorps or Humans of New York, other similar storytelling projects, but I wanted to figure out a unique way that we could share an audio project like that, but that was consumable in a public art event setting. So our venue that we ended up getting chosen for was the Blue Bridge, so this is where we were. And this is a photo from last summer. But in my experience, audio projects can be very powerful, often are very powerful, but they require an investment from the person who's who's viewing or are participating in it. You got to sit down, you got to put the headphones on, and you've got to give that 5-10 minutes to really listen to what that person's saying. So I knew that in a Artprize setting, we needed to kind of pare that down. How could we create a smaller, quicker experience that kind of got people in and got them thinking, but didn't necessarily bog them down into a full-on like headphone situation? So we chose a phone booth as our vessel. We settled first on a phone as our vessel. It seemed like a good, quick way for people to engage, and then quickly we were led to the phone booth. One of our initial inspirations and a project that has always spoke to me quite a bit was Phone of the Wind, so by an artist, Ataru Sasaki. He installed this phone booth in his garden following the 2011 tsunami, and it was a way for people to speak to their dead loved ones. The phone was not hooked up to anything, very Japanese nature. They were just speaking to the wind. They were letting these messages go, and it was a way for them to sort of release these messages. Instead of providing an opportunity for people to talk to those who have already passed, our project was looking to hear from people who were still alive and create ways for their voices to be heard and those stories to be told, and then to encourage the rest of us to maybe ask those similar or same questions of those we love. So this is on the left, our phone booth that we found. It had been in a woman's yard for 14 years. So we recovered it from her yard, and we started off on making our project. So over the course of the last summer, we did just around 100 interviews, people ages 30 to 105 from across the U.S., a lot in the Grand Rapids area. We did interviews in person in senior living facilities. We did interviews with displaced and homeless folks downtown in Grand Rapids, as well as over Skype and Zoom and all of those things, and many members of the community that we reached out to via the news and other outlets. We also would then put together a phone line. So we know that because of COVID, there was an accessibility issue. It was a challenge. So the phone line started out as a way for us to collect responses, but then during the event, we had snippets from all of the interviews that people could call in and listen. So we did have, the phone booth was a very tactile experience, so we had people concerned about touching, and so this was an opportunity for people to experience it. Again, expanding that experience and expanding the accessibility of the project overall. There is a typo on this slide. I'm going to say that outright. Well, we did ask a lot of questions. There was an extensive sort of list of questions that we were working from. Most of the project surrounded these two questions here. One, what is one thing you wish you had done or hope to do more in your life, and why? And two, if there is one thing you would hope for or want to share with a future generation, what would that be? So from that, there was on the previous slide, we took the 100 interviews, we kind of split them all up, and we had 350 different clips. And then we kind of hit the Post-it notes and started looking at what are our overarching themes. Obviously we had answers, all sorts of different answers that didn't necessarily fit into specific categories. But again, we're all very human, and these experiences started to fall into different categories that we would then make into the channels on our phone. So our 9 channels are advice, legacy, help, death, wishes and regrets, family, travel, beliefs, and perspective. So each of those channels correspond to a channel on the phone. Actually, I'll stay here for a second. So the way that it worked was we worked with a good friend of mine who programmed this phone inside of our booth. And so the way it would work is you'd step inside the booth, you'd choose a channel. So say you choose advice, so you press 1 and you press pound and you'd hear a clip. So all the clips were 2 minutes or less. So it kept that, again, keeping that experience, keeping people kind of engaged and nothing too heavy. But then when you hang up and pick up again and press 1 pound, you would then hear a different clip. So every channel had anywhere from 25 to 75 different clips. So you really got a unique experience every time, and the idea being you could come back over and over and either pick it up over and over, or you could come back and have a unique experience each time. So while we were doing the interviews, I got to work on updating the booth. As I said, it sat in a woman's yard for 14 years, so it needed a little TLC, and it was all sort of the original hardware, so we stripped a lot of that out. We did a lot of modernizing to it, and we also wanted to create an experience that was beyond just your traditional phone booth. So we lined all the glass we covered in a two-way mirror film, and so that created an evolving experience inside the booth from day to night. If you're familiar sort of with two-way mirror film, whichever side is brightest, you cannot see through, and the other side then you can see through. So during the day, you were really not able to see in, but at night, which was more of our intended experience, you were able to see in, and the person inside, due to the lights inside, were not then able to see out. So the photo on the right is sort of my first moment of having the lights inside and experiencing that, you know, that mirrored experience inside. So we really wanted to create this isolating experience. I think as we consider death and the ways in which grief affects us, it is that isolated feeling where we feel very alone, but it's a moment of sort of self-reflection. And in the end, the booth looked like this. So we had a very dramatic effect. We did some updates. So the lights inside, when you picked up the phone, everything animates. So you did have that sort of user experience inside. And the booth got to exist here on the Blue Bridge in downtown for better or worse for 3 weeks. Luckily, it's a pretty tough piece of equipment, so it withstood a lot of abuse, but also a lot of good attention and a lot of interaction. We had people of all ages, you know, very engaged, and throughout the day, it was open 24 hours. So, you know, day and night, we were checking in and got the opportunity to, you know, interact with people as they kind of explored the booth and what it was up to. Uh-oh. I think oh yeah, we added a little video. I forgot this was in here. So just to give you a little idea of how it all works and what that experience kind of looked like. Oops. And then inside you get this sort of both isolating but infinite experience as you mirror all the surfaces inside. It was a hit with people. Families really enjoyed sharing the experience. I mean, I guess one thing I didn't anticipate was the sort of symbolic nature of a phone booth. You know, there's a lot of people of older generations that have a tie to and an understanding of the significance of this big blue box that you know, before phone booths. So we had a lot of families that were sharing with their kids, and so there was this unintended sort of level of engagement there as well. And then people that are more familiar, you know, like to see how many they could fit into the phone booth and those those sorts of things as well. We had a really good response. People lining up to get in there and check it out, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I spent 3 weeks down there, more or less, a little bit every day, and you know, getting to hear people's stories, both a lot about phone booths, but also about their own experiences with death and grieving, and yeah, so it was a very powerful experience, both for us as artists, but also I think for the people who engaged with it. And like I mentioned, the Artprize is a juried event, but it's also decided a lot by public vote. And so after the 3 weeks was up, the votes were tallied, and we won. So it's my mom and I at the award ceremony in complete and utter disbelief and exhaustion. And it was an incredible honor to be selected at all, to be in the event, but then to be able to win was obviously a wonderful experience. And I think hopefully our hope is that the project then continues to encourage people to have those conversations. And we're looking now, we kind of put it to bed for the winter, and now that it's starting to get warm, we are looking at some new opportunities. So you might be seeing it perhaps even here in Cincinnati. So to leave you, I wanted to give you just one of the clips from from the phone line. The clip I'm going to play you, I don't know if it's going to autoplay or not, so I'm going to wait. The clip I'm going to play you is from a resident from one of the senior living facilities we worked with. His name is Cliff. He was one of my favorites, but he gives a nice little clip about his own personal advice, and I think it's a good place to leave us for today. Well, I saw some of you taking photos of the phone line. It is unfortunately not up at the moment. We're kind of figuring out what its next life will be, but you can follow us on Instagram. There is an account. It's be4ugo.21, and that's on Instagram. And we are constantly kind of updating there and trying to figure out where we're going next. So if you're interested, you can always reach out. I have all of it logged, and I'd be happy to share it with you. So thank you very much, and have a good day.